Welcome to the Louisa Project 2027 podcast, where we discuss education, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Today, we're going to do our first of a series we're going to call My Educational Journey. And today's guest is Michael Salamone. He's a musician, artist, writer, activist, and podcaster. He grew up in a place called the Chautauqua Institute. It's a fascinating place, and he's gonna talk to us about that. And we're gonna talk about using community to foster education and foster a love for lifelong education. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Michael Salamone. Michael, could you tell us a little something about yourself?
Michael, great pleasure to speak with you today. Well, certainly, I think you were very kind in summing up the different areas of things I dabble in, but my name's Michael Salamone. I've got a website, it's michaelsalamone.com, and there you can visit things that I've written, music I've recorded, things that I'm passionate about, but I'm quite fortunate because of what we'll be talking about of being encouraged to follow different cultural and educational pursuits that even as an adult, I've figured out a way to keep doing that. And so I was excited about this topic of conversation and I'm very glad to be here with you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Before we get started, I want to plug something. Michael did an album along with his friend. I'm sorry, what is your friend's name again, Michael?
Well, on a majority of the songs, Chad Lenig is on there, but there's
Mhm.
also other musicians. Stephanie Rogers sings on a track, and a great band that I get to do stuff with every once in a while called the Three Olive Orchestra plays on some stuff.
Okay, great. So there you go. It's an album CD. You can download it, and I'll ask him to share how you pay for that, which is really interesting. But the proceeds go to the Bernie Sanders campaign. We're both Bernie Sanders fans, but we just want to put that out there as progressives. Michael,
Yeah,
could you share more about the Solidarity album?
definitely. So I participate in this thing every year at FAWM.org, which stands for February Album Writing Month, where musicians from all over the world come together to support each other to try and write, and most of us try and write and record 14 new songs in the 28 days of February. And I've become very friendly with musicians like Chad Lenig, who played on 8 of the tracks through this process. And one of the things I wanted to do this year was write a Bernie song because there's a ton of Bernie songs out there, but for some reason, none of them spoke to me. And I'm really
Mhm.
passionate about my candidate, and I'm a very passionate musician. It was weird. I figured it must be hard. It was. But I just wanted to keep trying until I got one I liked, and next thing you knew, I had like an album full of songs. And luckily, again, I know great, talented people to help me pull that off. So we rushed to put together an album that we called Solidarity, and you can download it for free on my website. But there's a donate to Bernie link. We ask you to give $5 or donate a third of an hour because $15 an hour minimum wage is a platform. Or if you
Mhm.
buy it on iTunes or Google Play or Amazon or any of the places, that money we will donate directly to the Sanders campaign ourselves. So the whole idea was, hey, we wrote these songs, we recorded them, and we think in a fairly professional manner. And if you like them and want them, they're available to you. But please support Bernie because that's what drew us to it. So it's hopefully to draw some attention as well as maybe raise some money. And I think based on there's been now a little over 600 clicks on the button on my website, and that seems to correlate with downloads. So assuming those people each gave $5, we won't know the iTunes stuff because that takes a few months. But
Mhm.
thinking we raised some decent money for Bernie.
That's great. That is awesome. That is awesome. All right. Okay, Michael, we're going to get started. I just want to before we get started, I just want to let people know what the premise of my educational journey is. Um, but what we want to talk to people who have had interesting journeys as far as education. We prefer to talk to non-traditional students, the students that did live the dorm life for the 4 years, and which most people are non-traditional students nowadays. Excuse me, I think the numbers somewhere around 75 to 80% of of post-secondary students are actually non-traditional students. So I guess we need to change the traditional what change what is traditional and what is not traditional. But in any event, that's what we like to do. And today, again, we're going to talk about the Chautauqua Institute, where Michael grew up. I like to, first of all, tell us what the Chautauqua Institute is. We're going to have a video in here, but I'd like to hear from you what the Chautauqua Institute is.
Yeah, if anybody wants to go to ciweb.org, that's their website. But Chautauqua Institution is was founded in 1874 by religious people, but quickly became a platform for discussing religion, education, philosophy, and the arts. And now we have music schools and art schools and ballet schools uh, and every pursuit you could have, as well as a daily lecture platform, one on religion, which is generally based on what they call the Abrahamic Initiative, meaning that it's Jewish folks, Islamic folks, and Christian folks talking
Mm-hmm.
about their commonplace of the Abrahamic tradition. And
People
then
are
there's an
both.
afternoon lecture that each week has a different topic. It could be on the environment or something political or on writing. It's a varied thing every year, but there's 9 weeks of topics, and very big people come and speak. When FDR spoke at Chautauqua, he called it the most American thing in America. And then Chautauqua branched out. And at one point, there were, I believe, 30 some across the country, Chautauquas. And there's still a few. I know in Boulder, Colorado, there's one. But there was a tent movement that this lecture circuit would spend the summer touring the country. And this is the days of before radio and then leading
Mm-hmm.
into radio and definitely before television. This is how Americans got educated, or at least got adult education, and how they entertained themselves were through Chautauquas. Well, I grew up in the original one, which is still thriving on the same platform, and was privileged to have all this stuff around me, be it cultural or I remember when I was 5 years old, they had a summit with the Russians to try and talk peace talks with the Russians. I mean, just to be surrounded by all this stuff and going to symphonies with my great grandparents 2, 3 times a week. Really big influence on my lifelong pursuit of trying to become more informed and more worldly.
That's great. That is absolutely awesome. How did you end up at Chautauqua? You say you told me you grew up there, but I understand it's a summer program. So your parents lived there. How did you end up there?
Well, that goes back a few generations. My great
Okay.
great grandmother's parents, so my 3 times great grandparents, had the first boarding cottage or hotel in Chautauqua, the Fox Cottage. And then my great grandparents, my great grandfather was a math professor, and she was a nurse. They settled here, settled in Chautauqua. So their kids and my parents' generation after all grew up here, and my mom, also a teacher, still lives here. So I grew up on the grounds of Chautauqua, which is pretty strange because it is a summer program. So in
Hmm.
the winter, there's like 100 families, and then in the summer, it's like a thriving little city. So there's a little
So
culture
it's not
shock
like
going
The
on.
Shining in the off season, is it? Just the hotel.
Not quite. At least to me, it wasn't. It seemed more like we had this huge 100-acre playground to
Yeah, I can
10
imagine. I can
kids.
imagine. Yeah, 10
But
kids.
well, out of the 100 families that were there were probably like 10 of us that lived on the grounds of
Oh,
Chautauqua.
okay, okay. I thought your
And then,
parents had 10 kids. Wow, that's a lot of siblings.
oh no, 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 it was just me. But
Yeah.
then the greater community is still pretty small, even outside of the Chautauqua institution. The
Hmm.
towns around. My high school had maybe, I think it was 37 kids in our graduating class.
Wow, I thought mine was small. Mine had 88. Marist High School, Bayonne, New Jersey. All right, I just want to let everybody know I had to represent. Now, I also have an upstate New York experience from Marist High School. We went to Esopus, New York, and we did summer programs there for different groups. We had inner city kids, I guess I could say fellow inner city kids, um, uh, for special needs adults, and I did that for 2 summers out of my. I think I did it sophomore year and junior year, and that was a great experience. But enough about me. More about you and Chautauqua. Okay. So tell us about some of your experiences there.
Well, I feel like I don't even know where to begin sometimes.
Hmm.
It's a really unique place where you can bump into Sandra Day O'Connor in the middle of town, or be playing guitar at the square as a teenager, and Peter, Paul, and Mary come up and start singing with you. It's
Wow.
a fairly unique
Hmm.
place. But I guess what I would want to emphasize is on the programming, because, like I said, the lecture platform alone is just something amazing to be a teenager and start being interested in issues of like environmentalism, and then to have Al Gore come and speak on climate
Hmm.
crisis and have access to that is something you maybe get if you go to a major university, but
Yes.
it was
Yes.
just happening in my backyard.
Yeah, my
Uh,
brother went to Emory University in Atlanta, and I think it was Jimmy Carter spoke at his commencement. It was Archbishop Tutu spoke at his law school commencement.
wow.
Yeah, it was. I was like, wow, this is big stuff here, you know. But I'm sorry, continue.
And then just growing up around all those art schools and having the opportunity to take classes when I wanted to. I wanted to get better at screenwriting. There were screenwriters teaching week-long classes in Chautauqua that I could take classes. When I wanted to learn how to paint, there were classes I could sign up for in
Mm,
Chautauqua. And that's how I think I learned about how you can continue adult education, whether it be through various free universities around the country or even online stuff like Coursera, is because I would
mm,
take these classes and there would be people of all ages, baby boomers up to the elderly, who also decided, you know what, I want to learn figure drawing. So we all signed up for these classes. But then there are professional students who do a semester at Chautauqua as well, and you're exposed to watching their learning and growth, whether they're in the theater program or the ballet program or in the symphony. There's just so many opportunities to be exposed, not only for your own educational benefit, but to watch others endeavor in theirs. And I think that's
mm,
part of the community that when they do things like the PBS special that maybe gets a little missed, is because to me, a big part of the Chautauqua experience was always watching other people blossom and being
mm,
involved with them and having a sense of community of, hey, I saw you at the religion lecture yesterday. What did you think? And having a conversation and learning that they're there to have something extra on their school resume to hopefully play cello in the New York Symphony Orchestra one day, and
mm.
getting to know people on the level of their passions. It's just something that I've never been able to truly replicate elsewhere in my life.
That is absolutely amazing. And we one of the things I wanted to stress, as you know, and we spoke about this earlier, I wanted to stress the value of the community being part of the educational process, of part of the educational experience. I think, I mean, I would be remiss, obviously, without mentioning that, not everybody can have a Chautauqua experience out there, obviously. I mean, there are kids out there that don't have access to things like that. So I think we would, it would behoove us as a country, as communities, to understand that you can have your own Chautauqua, even if it's just having books around the house, so kids can explore the world through books, educational videos, educational television. There's all kinds of experience. Take your kids to the museum. Take your kids to festivals, free festivals, or every major city has one or two free festivals at the park, and just giving them that experience. What do you think about that, Michael?
Uh, Amen, amen, amen. That's one of the big takeaways of growing up and what we've already talked about, and then going out into the world and doing my own thing is I've noticed that exact value is that for kids especially, it's all about access. And again, I'm quite privileged to just by luck of genetic lottery of where my family lived, grow up in this place. But uh, you can accomplish a lot of that. And I've tried twice in two different cities to help with after school arts programs for kids to give them access. And as parents or guardians or even educators who just care a little bit extra out there for kids, can't endorse enough about just exposing them to things. Like I lived in Denver for quite a long time, and there are free days once a month at each of the art museum, the Botanic Gardens, the like I don't know what you would call it, the Opera House they call it, but they have mostly off Broadway type shows, and
Mm-hmm.
all these places do have, especially if they're getting any public funding, they should have a free day that even the poorest amongst us can make time to do, other than it's hard to make time when you're poverty. So that speaks to what you just said is, use your library, which these days libraries are more
Absolutely.
than just books. There's music and movies as well. Uh, so my mom, to her credit, made sure that I had access to all the Woody Allen movies. I don't know if you can say this anymore, but all the Bill Cosby records, the George Carlin records,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because she saw I had an interest in comedy, and my dad even noticed very young that, oh gosh, my kid's going to be a songwriter, and made sure that I had a guitar
Mm-hmm.
and access to all sorts of music, from jazz to folk to Frank Zappa and rock and hip hop and whatever I was interested in. There, even if money was tight, there was a way to make sure Michael was taking in music at a giant velocity. And I think that that is something that parents should do. Even the poorest amongst us, you can identify your kids' interests and help them grow into the person they want to be by showing them that you just have to seek out your own education. I know for me, even though I've had a traditional educational background, like you mentioned at the top of the show, the things of most value to me are educational pursuits I went after myself, whether it be taking class on music production, or just going to the library and getting books on things that I'm interested in, or internet research. In these modern times, you seek out the things that you're passionate and interested about, and if you can instill that in a young person to really help them nurture their creativity through curiosity, I just think that it presents a much more broad-based worldview to any person, regardless of what neighborhood you grow up in, or your economic background, or any of these other boxes that society can put us in. If you are encouraged to pursue your curiosities, the world becomes much bigger to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Michael. I think because I know for me growing up, my parents were very, as I think I talked to you before about this, is that my parents were very into getting those experiences, meeting new people, listening to different types of music, listening to being around other people that spoke different languages. I didn't learn a whole
Mhm.
lot, but I was open to listening to those languages, which is a big thing, especially where the way our culture is going here in America nowadays, where everybody must speak English, as opposed to, hey, wait a minute, maybe I can learn a little Spanish or a little Chinese or a little Portuguese. It makes you. I mean, I've traveled a lot. I used to have a lexicon of about 20 words because I coach football. I had a lexicon of about 20 words in like 5 different languages: English, of course, English was Dutch, German, Arabic, French, Dutch, German, Arabic. There's 4 languages: Dutch, German, Arabic, and French. As I know, I'd say right, left, faster, get down, and all, and those languages, because that's who I was around, and
Mhm.
and that was because my parents were open to us learning languages. We didn't push away at these experiences because they were experiences,
Mhm.
and that's valuable for a child. If you have a chance to learn something, go learn it. We're big about it here at our house. If you're interested in something, let us know. We'll sit down with you and we'll see if we can work something out to help you become better at it or learn more about it. And of course we kind of forced them to say, okay, bring me something. Go do your research and tell me what we need to do for you. And
Mhm.
try to force them to educate themselves in the process. And sometimes they find out, oh, maybe I don't want to do that. You
Yeah.
know.
Well, that's part of
Yeah.
the experience. Is oftentimes, and throughout your life, you think you might have an interest in something, you look into it, and you know what, that shoe didn't fit, but
Yeah, absolutely.
you go find the pair that does.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so now we talked a little bit about Chautauqua, and like as I said, we're going to put one of the Chautauqua videos on this video and in the podcast, so people can kind of get a feeling for it. I've watched a few of the videos, and the place is absolutely fascinating. You see people like E.J. Dion and Sandra Day O'Connor, and he's like, wow, this place is amazing. And it's very fast. It's fascinating. I hope one day I drag my family up there. This summer is Germany, so that's where we're focused on this summer, or perhaps next summer. So we in this show we like to get to the challenges, right? What do you think? We touched on it a little bit. In a community that doesn't have these type of resources and may not have these type of contacts, of course, there's going to be a challenge to build this type of environment or something close to it. This is an odd question, but what do you think parents could do? We've already touched on some of it. Parents or community organizers or the community itself could do to try to foster this type of thing in their communities.
Well, I think primarily, like most things, it starts with a discussion amongst your peers. I've been involved with 2 different after-school arts programs that were founded by parents who felt the arts had been cut in their schools and their kids weren't getting a fair shake. And both of these were inner-city programs. These weren't people who had access to the arts on their own anyhow. They just happened to be concerned parents that their kids weren't getting enough and they wanted better for their kids. And in both experiences for that, how it was made happen is they identified the concern. They showed interest in wanting to put together an after-school program and then invited any artists who might offer their time, whether they were musicians or visual artists or performing artists. And as they were able to put together nonprofits around this vision and were able to start actually bringing money in, these artists started finding an income for it too. But I think the thing to emphasize is the artists invested in the school as much as the parents needed. They were there. They stepped up. But because of that now, both there's one in Jamestown that I helped you do fundraising for early on, Jamestown, New York, called the Infinity Arts Program. They're just amazing, and I know tons of artists who have a paying gig through this school now. And the other was in Denver, which was very similar, but I would almost reverse it, that the musicians were like, hey, we keep hearing about arts being cut from the schools, and they went and found parents that wanted to be active.
Okay.
So I don't think that's just true for the arts, but it's hard now. The economy's tough. A lot of parents are working 2-3 jobs and aren't even seeing their kids. So
yeah, absolutely, that is
I don't want to
so
put
true.
a lot of blame that oh well, you could have started an after-school program. Well, maybe you couldn't, but you have to communicate with your peers, the other parents, try and voice your concerns, and then look for solutions. And those solutions might be like what Michael brought up earlier, of you take advantage of the free day at the museum, or you sit down and talk with your kid about, hey, what are you interested in that maybe you're not learning enough about, and come up with a game plan. But I just think so much of it just starts with, like, all the things that Michael and I talk about off this show. It starts with the grassroots.
Yeah,
It starts with the folks identifying a problem and wanting to change it. And that's true with a political movement. That's true with your damn family.
Yeah, that is so true. Because like I said, we like to get to the challenges, and we also, as you know, the show's about innovation and entrepreneurship. And you mentioned that there was an opportunity to build a nonprofit. I mean, you're not going to make a lot of money doing a nonprofit, right? You're going to get enough to eat, but if it's something you love, oftentimes that's enough.
And a good teaching job for a working artist can make the difference on whether you keep a roof over your head. So
Absolutely.
their initial investment, speaking of entrepreneurship, of time, has now paid off for them in a day job that supports their night job, but is still in the same genre of job.
You're talking about loving what you do. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that has great value. On our last podcast with Jennifer Louise, talking about gardens, and you told me you heard the podcast, and she was just so passionate about this project, and being able to work within your passion. I did that for a little while in a nonprofit in Europe, teaching flag football in Dutch schools and German schools, and it was just. I just wanted to do that for the rest of my life. If somebody said, "Okay, here's a paycheck, you can do that the rest of your life," I'm dropping everything. I'm gone. Not my family, obviously, but but that passion can take you so far. But at the same time, we have to realize that people have to eat. People need a roof over their head, and that's something that needs to be worked out. And that's part of the entrepreneurship piece. I did an article on starting businesses that are nonprofit. Well, they're what do they call them? I can't remember now. Yeah, story of my life. I can't remember. They were basically, it was a business that was a public benefit, or it was a public benefit company.
Yeah, public. I'm working with a company right now on founding something like that. It's highly intriguing.
Yeah, I was watching. First, I was kind of cynical about it. So they're just businessmen trying to get to that grant money. But then I thought about it. I said, well, the profit motive is not always bad. As long as you stay within the realm of public benefit, if that's what your driving force is, let's try it. As long as you're doing good. Okay, if you can make a little money doing it, nothing wrong with that.
What sold me on that concept was looking into how Ben and Jerry's did it as being a for-profit company, but almost like tithing, reserving a certain amount of the profits that goes back to causes they support. And I think this is just another evolution of that kind of idea of how do you, if you are going to be successful as an entrepreneur, how do you make sure that you are also trying to serve the public good? And it seems to be a formula that works for a lot of places.
Yeah, and I think I'm as I said earlier, I'm a bit of an entrepreneur myself, and I think it's important that if you have, especially for those of us who are progressives, if you have a passion for something and there's an opportunity to keep a roof over your head and do good things, I don't see a downside to that. I don't see a downside to that at all. So it's we've got to, and I think the United States we've got to the point that we're not tapping into the ingenuity of everyone. Whether it be because of education, whether it be because of funding, is we're not tapping into these resources that are right here in front of us, and that's the people. The guy that has an idea that could change the world is probably sitting on the sofa watching the draft right now. But he doesn't know how to access those resources. Doesn't know how to get his idea out there, and that's part of what we want to do here. But we just happen to be focusing on education, because I think that's the foundation of any successful society, is their education system.
Oh, so for certain. For any successful person, and by successful in that regard, I mean any person who has successfully become an adult, no matter their work success, but their success as a human being, all is based on the fact that at some point they became learned. Whether that be from books or from actual education.
Yes, absolutely, and it's all education, informal or informal. Learn what you need to learn. Because I read a book a long time ago. It was while I was doing the coaching, teaching kids football and stuff. I read a book. It was called "Do What You Love and the Money Will Come." They skipped a step. Get the training and education. Do what you love. Get the training and education, and then the money will come. They didn't tell me about the training and education.
One of the best pieces of advice anybody ever gave me in my life was, I was a very little kid, and it was a random old lady in Chautauqua on a park bench told me, "Life is open book," meaning,
yeah, absolutely.
There's no test you study for. It's being on the tip of your toes, ready to seek out the answers when you need them.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the age of Google, it's even more true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's we're gonna take a step forward. Now again, we talked about the challenges. Let's do a little thought experiment. Let's well, you've kind of lived this. Let's say we've come to this community, and some parents have gotten together and decided, we want our arts program. We have an old community center that we could use. we want an arts program here. What are the steps they could take to try to make
Mhm.
something like that happen?
Well, this is at least what I've observed. I wouldn't have been active in these stages because I was more on a fundraising marketing level for both the
Yes,
organizations
yes.
I worked with. But
I kind of sprung
uh,
this on you. I'm sorry about
I can tell you
that.
the one in Jamestown, New York, which is just a giant after school program now and is helping fund itself and artists so well. I know that they pretty much started using church community rooms with, again, volunteer musicians that felt that they could teach kids, and they started with kids that obviously had enough talent that their parents were like, "Oh crap, my kid's got a lot of talent. How do I how do I help them?"
Yeah,
Because they're
yeah,
not going to
yeah.
get it at a public school more than just the generic.
Hmm.
Um, and some of these kids are have grown up to be exceptional adult artists. That's a whole nother show probably. I'll get to it if you want.
All right, I'm
Uh,
gonna get my pen out. We can book it. We can book it.
but anyhow, so you again you identify the problem and you just see what resources might be available to you. After that, forming a 501c3 is really just a bunch of paperwork at your county
Yes.
building. Yeah, that's really easy. One of the parents that have proven themselves to be more responsible with money becomes your chief financial officer. Whoever's doing the most administrative work by the time you get to that part is probably your executive director, and then all of you who started, well, you're the board.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And it can
and
be
then
that simple. That's the great part about
and then you start actually working towards now how do we grow this thing, and then it's where you just said is, well, there's that community building that might be inexpensive. All right, how much do we have to raise for that? Okay, this is how much we have to ask for. We need, let's say it's $1,000 a month for rent. Now you have to figure out, well, how do I get funded for $1,000? You start talking to businesses that you and your families that are involved do stuff. Can they do anything? It is a tax write-off. You start doing the typical route for small uh, nonprofits. You do the bake sales or selling some catalog item to raise extra money. When it's all said and done, it's some time. It's just like it would take some time to earn $1,000 extra a month in your own life, but it's a job that you do and you delegate through the ranks of those people who have banded together. And there's slow growth until you start getting attention. So you want to do some marketing. You want, hey, Sally's really good with the Facebook. Let's get her on social media and
it. Yeah.
start getting the word out about the
Hmm.
organization. And then, hopefully some media organization picks up on it. And then all of a sudden there are people wanting to give money to you, and you just keep growing. It takes passion, like a lot of things. But one thing I've seen in action, and I'm not a parent myself, but man, I've seen so many times now that when a parent becomes passionate, anything is possible because people don't love anything as much as they love their kids.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. I can absolutely vouch for that. My kids don't like me, but we love each other.
That's generally how that works too.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Michael. Thank you so much for that. Um, Now we've talked about having these things and excuse me in communities and trying to build it and trying to build it out and the trying to get an opportunity to be seen and be heard. So let me put this out there: if you're have a community operation or you want to try to build something, contact me and we'll try to get you on and have a podcast and we can talk about what you're trying to do. So that's just time. Just send me an email or talk to me on Twitter on the Twitters and we're easy to find. So I just want to put that out there. All right, Michael. Let's go back to Chautauqua. Let's go back to the wonderful world of Chautauqua for a few minutes.
We do like natives do like to call it Victorian Disneyland.
Victorian, okay, if that's what you want to call it. I love the aspect of it being the three major Abrahamic religions. I love that aspect of it because we found a way to push Islam out of the picture, right? And it's an entirely separate entity. But a lot of people don't realize, maybe sometimes on purpose, that Islam is part of one of the three major Abrahamic religions. This was pre 9/11. But how does that work out at Chautauqua?
Well, I think that they specifically adopted that initiative, and this might be a little out of my expertise, but I think they specifically responded to 9/11 by making that the thing. Though, I mean, I remember seeing Islamic speakers early in life. They made the commonplace the actual focus as a response to 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And from being exposed my whole life, but being raised in a Christian household, I can tell you my belief is if you take the beginning chapters where the Jewish folks, the Islamic folks, and the Christian folks all agree,
Mm-hmm.
uh, in the middle we all kind of go our own ways a little bit. But when Jesus comes around, which is really what makes Christianity Christianity, technically speaking,
Yes.
uh,
Got his
our
name,
Muslim
Christ. Yeah.
our Muslim brothers and sisters
Mm-hmm.
are with us. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus
Yes.
is the Son of God in their Bible. The end time stuff is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the commonplace is amazing, and it's just a
Absolutely.
shame that we let politics divide us because we
Absolutely.
are brothers and sisters.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time in the Middle East, in Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. Well, that's North Africa. And I have to tell you, in the day to day, I have lived in some places in the States where I felt in a lot more jeopardy than I did in these countries. You know, and at the end of the day, we're just people. You know, we just want to live our lives. But that's another conversation for another day. But I think that's as far as the educational piece. People need to understand that people are just people, and that's a very very important learning experience. You don't keep people at arm's length just because they wear something different on their head or they read a different holy book than you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michael. I just took over.
No, we're singing the same chorus, I think, because that's
Mhm.
exactly what it is. And maybe another tip for parents on the sly
Mhm.
is if we aren't taught to think that because we have differences we shouldn't listen to each other or shouldn't be equal, that's not a natural occurrence. I don't believe.
Mhm.
Uh, but if you're like, oh, wow, this person has different experiences than us, we should learn from them, you grow up to be a totally different person. And,
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
think that just being, just like for education, being open to ideas, being open to people
Mhm.
is more rewarding than going the other way.
Yes, my mother, she's big, as I said earlier, she's big on broadening horizons, and sometimes it's just as simple as we said, going to listening to a different type of music, listening to listen to. I'm going to listen to a little Brazilian music today. I don't know what they're saying, but it's a beat. Let's listen, and,
Yeah, I think one of our first conversations, I was telling you how much I love the music out of Montreal, even though I don't understand all of it.
yeah, absolutely. The French, as far in production, I mean, when I lived in Brussels for a short time, and I would listen to this French radio station. I didn't know what they were saying, but it was hip hop and R&B station, and the
Yeah.
production was like, wow, it was absolutely amazing. I mean, at the time, there was a lot of on the American side. There were a lot of international influences. There was a lot of Indian and Pakistani influences in the music at the time. Jay-Z had a big hit using I forget the song. It was using a sample from an old Indian song, and but that was for American production. That was big, but in especially the stuff coming out of France, and it was absolutely amazing. And you had influences from all over the world. You would hear an Egyptian drum,
Hmm.
and you would hear I don't know, you would hear music, you'd hear different instruments from all over the world, and it was just an amazing time in music for me, because I would be riding to work and like, hey, just enjoy that. That is nice. That is really nice. And then when I did dabble in music myself, I was a young man named Sabo. He was from Macedonia. He was a producer at a studio in Germany, in central Germany, and we were there. It was beautiful. It was hip hop and R&B again, but he would just, if I heard a bass line. I was like, hey, I want to do something like this. He'd listen to it. He'd just go pick up the bass, or he would go pick up the drums, or he would go, let me go grab these bongos and do what I do. And it was just an amazing experience. I'm sorry, I took over again.
No, that's great. I'm taking it in, man. That's
yeah. It was
another thing, I guess, about Chautauqua that I was very blessed to have growing up is that there's world music all throughout, surrounded by the classical programming and the jazz and then the popular entertainment, which does bring in some rock. I mean, I saw the Allman Brothers at 12 years old. I saw probably Yo-Yo Ma 3 years previous to that. But so I was fortunate to take in world music. So by the time I became a musician, I hate the term genre bending. I like to say genre blending was very important
that's
to
a nice
me.
phrase. I like that. Yeah.
Of bringing in different influences. I once saw, maybe this is in his book actually, David Byrne from Talking Heads talk about that the really tribal type drums that drove those pretty much new wave pop songs done in a slightly punk way was because they came out of listening to that stuff, and then they're playing in this small noisy CBGBs, and you gotta work the room for sound, and you need tribal drums to drown out the bar noise.
Comes from necessity. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I've tried to take that personally of like, what's the story of this song? How do I tell it with maybe in a style, but also put in elements of another style that is more creative and interesting to me because I'm giving patronage to influences of not just the genre I'm currently writing in. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it makes a lot of sense
for me. Because if I can, just a story that I mentioned to you that I would like to bring up.
Yes,
as a kid, I was struggling as math in school, and I was a very good student, but for some reason, when we got to higher math, I had a really hard time wrapping my head around it. I mentioned previously my great grandfather was a math professor at the University of Buffalo, and I went to him. I'm like, I need your help. I want to keep my grade point average up. He took Dave Brubeck's In Time out, and he's like, "You like music, right?" Yeah. We start listening to jazz and these far out Dave Brubeck time signatures, and he started explaining, "All right, what you're hearing, this is time, this is math." And then we go to the sheet music and we talk about that as math, and then we'd start talking about base level math in conjunction to the time signatures. It broadened my capability for understanding mathematics exponentially. And it all because, again, as we've been talking about, an adult took my interest and wanted me to know more about that interest, but then was also to take it to another level, able to incorporate something I was not at all interested in, but show how it's relevant to that thing I was interested in and get me to where I needed to be. And I did make honor roll, which is very important when you live in Chautauqua because you only get a free gate pass when you're, because 15 and up, you have to have a gate pass. You only get a pass to Chautauqua if you are on honor roll. And for a family like mine that were educators struggling to stay in a resort town, it was really hard. Like, how's Michael going to come home at night if he doesn't make honor roll?
Michael's homeless if he doesn't make honor roll. I'm sorry. We were talking a little bit about music before the internet gods cut us off. I cannot have a discussion about music without a short story about the most amazing musical mind I've ever met personally in my life. It's a British guy named Orlando Reed, and we met in the Netherlands. Well, actually, he was working in Germany at the time. He just got out of the military. He was a DJ, right? That's how I met him as a DJ, right? And he DJing in the United States for a kid who grew up in the hip hop era was totally different than DJing in Europe. DJing in the UK anyway, was about blending the music. It was about making the environment do what you wanted it to do. There was no mixing and scratching. There was none of that. Not saying either is better or not either is worse. I'm just saying it was just different. the way that guy could blend music was amazing. You just could not, you'd never noticed when the song was changing until that bass dropped, right?
Mm.
And what he did, and his the core of what he was drum and bass, but obviously there were other influences in that. And he was half Asian and half white, so he had a lot of Caribbean influences in his music, and he also did some remixes. Right, he could do a remix in like an hour. Right, he would do a garage and two-step remix in the blink of an eye, and he would take a song that was hot on the radio and just take it, put it in his computer, and he got his headphones on, bobbing his head, smoking cigarettes. Next thing you know, this remix comes out of the other end, and it was just amazing. And here's the final part of that story. Well, not the final part. It's again another podcast. I took one of his remixes to a radio station in Amsterdam. It was the only pure hip hop and R&B station in Amsterdam. The guy running it was a guy named Glaze. He was actually from New York. And I sat down with Glaze, and we were talking about broadening, because I was basically Orlando's manager. DJ Perez was his name. And if you get look for DJ Perez Orlando Reed on SoundCloud. He's got some amazing stuff going on there. And he's doing a lot of bossa nova house mixes and stuff. But again, another day. And I got there, and I got to this meeting in Amsterdam. One of the meetings I did in Amsterdam. Again, that's the other story. We'll save it. And I sat down talking to Glaze about broadening their music to the two-step and garage genre. And I did. It was a remix of Destiny's Child, one of their songs, and I let him hear it. It was so good. He put it on the air within 5 minutes. He said, "Can I have this?" I said, "Yeah, it's your copy." He put it on the air on the spot. That's how good this guy was. And we had a couple of other opportunities, but it just didn't work out. But the guy, he's just a few years younger than me, but he was just amazing, absolutely amazing. He would get on the keyboard and just do amazing things. He played the drums, and okay, that was my Orlando Reed story. He was just an amazing guy. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I was intrigued, man. That's the sort of stuff I love. There was a semester in college that I kind of took off and went and played ski bum in Telluride, Colorado, and there was this DJ who ended up becoming pretty big, I think, on the West Coast by the name of DJ Harry. But he was experimenting with mixing bluegrass with electronic music.
Oh, wow. Wow.
In a mountain town, that's just going to be hot. And
yeah, absolutely.
So much the same time that a band that became pretty big in bluegrass, String Cheese Incident, was coming up, and they were playing in Playwright a lot. So they started collaborating like live electronica with the bluegrass band, and it was just amazing. And I'm not even a big bluegrass guy, but I loved it. I thought it was amazing.
I love musical collaboration. I love watching people that have, from different genres getting together and making something beautiful. That just it is just something. It is something amazing. I truly miss the times when, as a non-musical guy, I have a decent ear for music, but as far as making everything happen and but being around those creative people and listening to what they do and them interacting with each other, the experiences I had in Germany. I had a rapper from St. Louis. I had another rapper from Texas, another guy from Florida. We had Sabo, who was from Macedonia, and we had guys from all over the world. We had a guy who was a Jamaican guy who would come in and drop some Rasta lines on the music. It was just amazing to have all these people in this room, but music was their language. Music was their common language, along with English, obviously. And they all got together, and when it came to doing it, they didn't always get along outside of this, but when it came time to make music, they got it in. They really got it in. Well, we got off subject. We were supposed to be talking about Chautauqua, Michael.
Well, that again, what you just said speaks to me as that's a big belief of mine, based on that great grandpa story I told you, teaching me math through music. Is music is two languages at the same time. It's a very probably perfect language that it's rooted in mathematics, and
yeah, absolutely.
You write out this math and it means the same thing to a musician who only speaks German and a musician who only speaks Japanese. They can read the same language that's based in math. But then there's that other layer that we more commonly associate to music of how it communicates to us, for lack of a better word, spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
uh, or emotionally.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and that's its own language. And the masters know how to speak both fluently and weave it in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Others like me, it's hit or miss whether you're even getting the syntax right in one language. But
Mm-hmm.
but what you said about it being a language, that really speaks to me,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's, if we ever meet intelligent life, there's no better language for us to meet with is something based in math, like music is.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I got to tell another story. Talking about emoting, right? I was we were in, it was Orlando and me again. We were in a studio in Maastricht in the Netherlands, and we needed a bass player. I don't know how we got to this point. We are like, Orlando came to me, me being the executive producer, I got to make stuff happen. Orlando's like, yeah, I need a bass player. I said, dude, you don't tell me stuff ahead of time, right? So I was like, okay. So I talked to the guy who owned the studio. I said, you have a bass player? So yeah, let me make a phone call. And about an hour later, this Japanese guy walks in with the bass. He comes in and he sits down, and he and Orlando start talking music stuff. And I mean, again, as a non-musician, I'm just watching. And they start nodding, and then the guy pulls his bass out of his case, and he starts playing. And the minute he touched that bass, everything stopped. And I'm like, wow, this little Japanese guy. And then talking. Then later I started talking to him. I was like, all right, I wish I could remember his name. And it turns out he used to play for Parliament.
Ah,
I was like, what? I was like, you what? And we would sit down and talked about Parliament and Funkadelic for like an
nice.
hour and a half, 2 hours. And I was like, wow. Here in the Maastricht in the Netherlands, in the middle, and not the middle of nowhere, obviously, but just to have that experience was like, it was wow. it was just amazing, the disparate directions that people come from when it comes to music. Here we got off Chautauqua again.
Well, the great thing about this, Michael, is that this conversation is very Chautauqua. We're talking about the blending of art forms with education, and that's that's exactly what that community is about.
Okay, see, we got Chautauqua. We got Chautauqua here in Huntsville, Alabama. All of a sudden, that's great.
We've got it everywhere. If you have any listeners that have ever read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, a big part of the beginning, at least, is talking about that spirit of Chautauqua and how you can have it anywhere.
Okay. What was the name of that? What was the name of that book?
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
It's one of those 60s and 70s hippie standard books. Like, I don't think my parents would have been allowed to go to the hippie concerts if they hadn't have read that book.
Show me a copy or you can't get in, right?
Yeah, you can find that book. You can get it. I bet you one Google search and it's free PDF is in the top 3 rankings.
I'm sure. Yeah, because I think part of what we really want to do with this podcast is is to provide people with I guess we'll call them milestones. Those touchstones. That's the word. That's the phrase. That's the word. Touchstones. Where these little things like this book that may spur something in them. Maybe the Chautauqua video that we're going to drop in this podcast slash video may be something that says, oh, you know what? That's a good idea. I'm going to try that in my community, and that's where. And I think that's where it starts. That's where it starts.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I can connect with no matter where I am in the world. This book, the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, may be the book that I pick up that changes my life. And you never know what that is for someone. And that's the amazing thing about life and meeting new people and new experiences is you never know what's going to be that thing that changes your life. So
that's so true.
Yeah.
Every moment is special like that. It could really just send you in a whole new direction.
Absolutely. And for me, it was that tweet I got from Ben Dixon. He said, "Do you write?" I guess. I'm a private school kid. I know how. Yeah, I know how. Right? Okay, let's give it a shot. And here we are. you know, and I didn't know I was going to meet Michael Salamone. I definitely didn't know that Ben was going to grow as quickly as he has. This is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. This is really I guess a good time to be in the world of Bernie, I guess.
Yeah, I think so, because so many of us are of a like mind and like spirit that
Mhm.
we encourage each other, which is beautiful at any time in your life when strangers encourage you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right. Well. Let's. I guess let everybody know where they can reach you, Michael. I guess we're gonna go ahead and close it out. It will take much more of your time.
Well, thanks for having me, Michael. It's such a pleasure to just riff and chat with you.
Yeah, we did a lot
But
of
yeah, my
riffing
name is
today. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
my name is Michael Salamone. My understanding is there's 160 odd Michael Salamones in the United States, but I'm the one who owns all the URLs. So michaelsalamone.com. On Twitter, I'm Michael Salamone. Um, various other social networks probably as well.
Okay.
So yeah, if you for some reason think you want to find me, I'm not hard to find.
Okay, great. And I like to plug the album, the Solidarity album, one more time. I've listened to it. Our colleague Michael Graham wrote an article on it, and it was good. Is that the album is this great music, and I think everybody should go ahead and listen to it, or go on if you want to. You can go to Michael Solomon's website. Or you can also go to progressivearmy.com and look up the article that Michael Graham wrote.
It's
And
on Spotify. You
there
can
you go.
stream the whole thing on YouTube Music.
Mhm.
It's pretty easy to get for free. But though, if you do use Spotify or YouTube Music, if you listen to the whole album, that's like a whole penny we get to throw into the Bernie Fund. Um,
Breaking
but
the yeah.
but it's an album outside of genres that I usually work in. I don't usually do Americana, and I think that sums up it. But I think it's, if you care about the Bernie stuff, the songs on some level will hopefully at least speak to you a little bit, and we're pretty proud of the musicianship considering none of us work in the genre we recorded.
It's really good stuff. It's really good stuff. And if you again, folks, go ahead and even if you're not a Bernie supporter, if you just like good music, go ahead and check it out. Okay, Michael, I want to talk to you later about getting you and Jennifer Louisa, our last podcaster. She talking about maybe melding your experiences with working with raising funds for the botanical project. I'd like to talk to you about that in the future. Maybe sit down with you. I'm looking forward to being on your show. Get on a big platform, get in the big leagues.
I don't know about that. I do a pretty rinky-dink production, but for some reason people come back.
Yeah, okay, hey, maybe they'll come back to listen to me too. That's important.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to getting the word out about what you're doing, and I'm always interested in at least brainstorming with and having a good conversation with anybody trying a nonprofit venture. So that would be exciting.
Okay, great. All right. So I guess that closes it out for our podcast with Michael Salamone. Thank you so much, Michael, for taking time out. I know you're busy and you've got things going on, and you had injury today. So number one, I hope you get better. All right, that's number one. And number two, the support from you and the rest of the Progressive Army has been amazing for this venture, and I truly appreciate it. All right.
Another great community, and that can be said right back at you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. All right. So I guess that's it. Michael, thank you again. I'm going to say some final words. Michael, if you want to stick around for a few minutes while I put out my final words, and we'll stop broadcasting, maybe chat a little bit, and we'll call it a day. How about that?
I'm here to listen, man.
Okay, great. All right. That's it for our second podcast of the Louisa Project 2027. Remember, we're here to improve education. And this conversation, I think, can go a long way in teaching people or helping people foster education in their communities through music or through the arts, through just having books around. And a good book that Michael mentioned, Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. So it may be your touchstone. You know, you never know. So again, I'd like to thank our guest, Michael Salamone. I'd like to thank my kids for making all of that noise. And thank you all again for tuning in to our show. So long.